You're listening to Airline Pilot Gateway Radio, where airline pilots, future pilots, airline HR execs, and flight schools connect. Tune in for airline career advice, interviews with thought leaders, and current events on pilot training and airline crew management. Subscribe on iTunes so you won't miss a thing.
Welcome to Airline Pilot Gateway Radio, episode number 23. I'm Paula Williams. We ran a survey of our listeners and website visitors to find out what questions you have about airline careers, how to get started, what the market is like, and so on. Captain Fred Mattfeld, John Williams, and I talk about the questions we received in this episode. So let's jump right in. So one of the questions was, if I'm not a U.S. citizen, are there any openings outside the U.S.?
So actually, the greatest opportunity for airline pilots is outside the United States. They're growing at such a rapid rate, they just don't have the crews to fly the airplanes, to buy more airplanes than they have, and they're still parking the airplanes that they currently have because they just don't have the flight crews. So there's a huge demand both in the United States, but more so outside the United States. Primarily the Asian countries.
Right.
And the requirements they have is to get started are a whole lot less once you have the tickets.
There's a lot of companies where you have to have 500 hours in type, but it's ever increasing where if you have the type rating, they'll put you in the right seat. Some companies will immediately put you in the right seat. Some have a cadet program where you ride for a certain amount of hours as an observer, working the radios and checklists, move to the right seat, and then when you have your time, you can move to the left seat. So there's quite a few options out there in probably 100 different airlines.
That's fantastic. And I know you mentioned Southeast Asia, India. Basically, is there anywhere that it is not a good market?
No, Europe, all of these countries, the entire world has such a demand for pilots, and there's just nobody to fill the seats. And so the opportunity has never been as great as it is right now.
I see. So another question that came in was, sounds like someone who is turning 62 this month. Are there jobs for pilots after 65?
Well, it depends what type of job and where he's located. Like in the United States, he can continue to fly. Maybe they would even hire him in a regional airline today at the age of 62 because there's such a shortage of regional pilots. But there's 135 work where, there is no age limit. So he could do corporate flying. Any place that has a 135, he could continue to fly as long as he could pass his flight physical.
Right.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and then there's another question that's very similar to that. Part 135 jobs after commercial and multi. Sounds like there is a lot of demand in the 135 arena. And for people that don't know what 135 is, that's basically private aviation. Is that right?
Yeah, it's not scheduled service like the airlines, which are considered 121. This is more like charter, like the airlines that fly the Grand Canyon, do tours, traffic watch. Those are all types of flying that don't have an age limit. Only airlines that operate under the 121 have the 65 age requirement, which probably in the next few years was going to be raised to 67 because of the shortage. Right.
That makes perfect sense. And so, charter pilots, corporate pilots, all kinds of folks are outside of that 65 requirement, right?
Correct. And then a lot of the charter pilots, they're going to the airlines because that's where they want to be, which is creating the opening in the charter world.
Right. outside the U.S., do they have the 65 requirement, or does that differ by area?
It differs by area, but it's just about, as far as I know, worldwide it's 65.
Uh-huh.
Everyone seems to stick together in that respect. I know that Japan and the Philippines have raised the age of 67 already, and the FAA is going to be doing it, probably in the near future, probably in the next couple of years.
Smart. Great. All right. So, someone asked, what is the best type rating with opportunities after? I'm going to split this into two questions. What is the best type ratings with opportunities after? I know there's probably a bunch of those with different opportunities depending on what kind of flying you want to do, right?
Well, if you're just starting out, you're going to be looking at the Airbus A320 or the Boeing 737. That's where they're going to start you out, at least in the airline industry. And then what's the best would really depend upon what airline they would primarily like to go to. The Airbus it seems like it has the most demand, but there are quite a few airlines that also operate mainly or solely 737. So you would really have to take a look at where you want to go fly and see what type of aircraft they fly and go for that type rating.
Right. It kind of seems to me like if you are in the U.S., you're more likely to fly Boeing, and if you're outside the U.S., you're more likely to fly Airbus. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah,
or is that...
in the U.S., it's kind of 50-50, I would say now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Southwest obviously has all 737s and Alaska, but, the demand if you look up in the sky, you'll see more Airbuses than you will Boeing just flying overhead. At least that's what you see here in Fort Lauderdale. So.
Right. Yeah, we're out west in the Rockies, and we see a lot more 737s, but...
So what you're saying is that they need to plan a strategy for their career before they jump in.
Exactly.
That makes
So
sense.
they need to decide where they are, where they ultimately want to fly, and what aircraft is there, and of those aircraft, decide on, if there's a decision to make, decide on a 320 or decide on a 737, and then proceed through their course with that in mind.
And that's something that we could help them with, trying to decide which type aircraft to get a type rating in. We would definitely be able to help them with that and guide them in the right direction, after we get a little bit more information from them.
Right. So when you talk to people, Fred, you find out, where they are now, where they want to be, and you help them kind of select the best options for them based on those kinds of things.
Yeah, we look at the countries that they want to primarily start flying in. India, for example, Indigo and Air Asia India, they're all Airbus fleets.
Right.
So, when it comes to India, we lean them more towards the Airbus. But again, it's really their choice.
That makes sense. What about the self-sponsoring issue? I know that comes up quite a bit. A lot of people feel like, the airlines should pay for my type rating. But, in a lot of cases, you end up with an advantage if you do that on your own. What's your thoughts?
Well, you know what? That irritates me a little bit, because if you want to be a taxi driver, they're not going to pay for your driver's license.
True. If you want to be a pharmacist, they're not going to pay for your university.
If you're going to be a doctor, they're not going to pay for your medical degree.
Yeah, the airlines
You're not going to pay for your degree.
Mm-hmm.
That's true, but the airlines, they don't want to pay for it because it's a huge expense to them, and if the student can't graduate, can't make it to flight school, that's just money lost for them. So they're always going to give preferential treatment to someone who walks in the door with that type rating in hand. So it's just like getting a college degree. When you go get a college degree, you don't ask the college, you pay for it. You either find grants, loans, or any other means to get the money you need to go to college. But you know that you have to pay for it, and it's the same with aviation training. You have to be the one to either secure a loan, get sponsorship, but find a way to walk in the door and be able to pay for your training up front.
Right.
Absolutely. And all of us here that fly have done that already.
Right.
No, I paid almost twice as much when I started taking lessons in the 90s to put myself through. So what we're offering is just huge.
True. Another question, what options are available to build hours without being a CFI?
Without being a CFI, you can go to airline brokers and ferry airplanes for them. You can do traffic watch. You can do banner towing. Just get yourself out there amongst your friends and go out for that $100 hamburger on the weekend, as we call it, where you fly someplace, get lunch, and fly back. And finding friends or other pilots that want to build time and flying together with them is also another really good way.
You can even fly Part 135 after you have the ratings. That's what I did to build some time.
Yeah, go fly checks at night,
Yep.
All you need is a commercial rating, and off you go.
Right.
There's companies like Ameriflight, they have the small little Lance aircraft, single engine aircraft, and you can start off flying with them. So, there's just a number of options.
Okay. Great. I'm going to leave all the money questions till last, but going back to this one, if I am an Indian by citizenship, will I be able to get a pilot job in the USA?
In order to work in the United States, you have to have legal residence here in the United States. So it would be that particular student would have to start the process to get his green card and his work permit to work in the United States. We can get him a student visa so he can train here, but he would have to get his own permit to his green card and his right to work in the U.S.
Right. That makes sense.
So it's possible, but it's something that they have to do on their own.
Right. Okay. So they don't have to be a citizen. They could be a legal resident and be a pilot.
My company, we have people that are not U.S. citizens that are flying. I know a guy from Australia, another guy from Italy, a guy from Germany, and they don't have U.S. passports, and they're flying here, but they have green cards and they're legal to work here.
Right. Okay. So is the instruction from experienced pilots with real-world experience?
The flight instructors don't always have that much more experience than what they have, but they've had a lot more training and they've satisfied the requirements for FAA training. And what we do in addition to the flight training that they get all the way up to the commercial rating is we have their mentorship. We have classes that we'll put on that are airline specific classes, which comes at no cost. And so we have an airline captain working with them along the way. And then once they go into the type rating program, that's all conducted by airline pilots.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. So I guess the last set of questions, and I'm going to lump them all together because they're all pretty much the same, is how much does this cost?
We call zero to hero.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to have it. You have zero flight time experience, and we can have you with your private pilot, instrument, multi-engine commercial, and type rated in the Boeing 737 or Airbus A320 for $65,000, which will give you approximately 290 hours in your logbook. Our schools are all accredited. We have some of the best schools out there, and from there you can really catapult your career and be flying an Airbus in a year or less.
Mm-hmm. Or the 737, right? The Boeing?
Right, or the 737.
Right. Cool. So that makes you really, really qualified to get an interview or get a job with depending on, your citizenship and other qualifications, get a job in a lot of different places in the world.
It's airline specific, but you're almost guaranteed. We can almost guarantee you a job interview, at which point it would be yours to lose, because we can get you into the seat of an airliner upon completion of your training program.
Right. And that's dependent on, of course, you keeping up with the work and, passing all your check rides and being qualified. And, a lot of people think, well, what if I don't? What if I'm not good enough? But I think, the program's been pretty successful, or at least the training programs that you've been involved with, at getting most people through the program pretty easily without a lot of hassle. It's hard work, but most people can do it, right?
If you really have to be dedicated to the program, and you really got to put 100% into it. If you don't approach it that way, your chances of not succeeding, increase. But if you just go in there and put 100% in, you can easily complete this program. It's not a gimme. I mean, you really do have to work for it, but it's such an excellent training program that we have a really high success rate.
Excellent. Great. Well, thanks for that. And I think that's all the questions, or most of the questions that we had from the survey. And I'm sure there's other questions that people have. You can always leave them in the comments, or just give us a call, and we'll take care of that and see what we can do to get you into a flying career.
Thanks for listening to Airline Pilot Gateway Radio. Subscribe on iTunes, let us know what you'd like to hear, and leave a rating.
You could be larger than life.